The NFC East hasn't had a back-to-back division champ since 2004, the longest streak in NFL history. And now with Saquon Barkley, the Eagles are in prime position to keep that streak alive in 2024. Or will Jaden Daniels shock the league in his rookie season with the Commanders? Maybe even Danny Dimes and the Giants? Probably not, but you never know. And with that, let's look at the best case, worst case, and most realistic season outlooks for each NFC East team. Starting off with the worst of the bunch in 2023, the 4-13 Washington Commanders. This team was once 3-3 and in the thick of the division with Sam Howell finally giving fans some hope as a franchise quarterback. And then things took a turn for the worst. Now Howell is a Seahawk, former Cowboy Dan Quinn is the head coach, and this team has a lot of new faces, headed, of course, by Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels. The worst case scenario is pretty simple. Daniels is a bust, Terry McLaurin and John Allen get traded by the deadline, and the front office starts wondering why they just hired a defensive coordinator that gave up 30 points in a wildcard playoff loss. It would be pretty hard for this team to get worse than they were last year, but still very possible with a rookie quarterback and a pretty low-end offensive line. Let's set the floor at 3-14. On the flip side, the best case scenario for this team looks pretty identical to RG3's 2012 Rookie of the Year campaign. Robert Griffin III took a team that was worst in the division all the way to an NFC East title. And there's definitely a world out there in which Daniels does the exact same. If JD puts together a Rookie of the Year type season, it would almost be hard for this team to miss out on the playoffs. So the best case scenario is an 11-6 playoff berth. And for the most realistic scenario, well, as mentioned, this is a Commanders offensive line that was once at a historic pace last year for sacks allowed, and there hasn't been a ton of change. It's almost inevitable that Daniels will struggle at times unless the line plays significantly better, but he's got a lot of weapons around him regardless to help that cause. Washington fans have their sights set on 2012 deja vu, but I think 7-10 is right where they end up. On to the New York Giants, who followed up a surprising 2022 playoff run to the divisional round with a complete flop at 6-11 last year. Daniel Jones is back under center in what should be a make-it-or-break-it season, and on that note, the worst-case scenario is the latter. This Giants team played significantly better last year with UDFA Danny DeVito and Tyrod Taylor, but now with Jones back at quarterback, we've seen how rough it can get. Not to mention, Saquon is out of town, and Darren Waller is likely retiring. More likely than not, this is going to be a rough season in New York, and the 2025 first overall pick is definitely a potential outcome. The floor is 2-15. Now, the best case scenario with Daniel Jones at quarterback is exactly what 2022 was. Jones gets back his Danny Dimes title, Brian Daboll looks like the mastermind that we all thought he once was, and Malik Neighbors is the next LSU superstar. Or Drew Lock comes in and shows everyone what he learned next to Geno Smith in Seattle and puts up a revenge tour of the century. Either way, 10-7 is the absolute ceiling for this team. And the realistic scenario, well, this is going to be an ugly year for a team that just doesn't have much going for them. Is there a world in which Malik Neighbors becomes Justin Jefferson, Dimes is serviceable, and the Burns-Thibodeau duo torments quarterbacks? Yeah, but it's highly unlikely. I'm giving the Giants a likely total of 4 wins to 13 losses. On to the Eagles, who followed up a Super Bowl appearance with an absolute meltdown of a season last year, going 1-5 in their last 6 games to finish 11-6. But we all know now Saquon Barkley's in town, which could completely rejuvenate the Philly offense and take even more pressure off the shoulders of Jalen Hurts. With that said, this Eagles team could be deadly if they reach max potential. I'd say that 14-3 is definitely a likely outcome in the best case. Now for the worst case, it's going to be pretty difficult for this team to flat out suck with an elite running back, a pretty fresh coaching staff, a bolstered secondary, so on and so forth. But if the Eagles play this season like they did to end last year, there's definitely a world in which the jobs of Hurts and head coach Nick Sirianni are up in the air. Let's set the floor at 9-8. Realistically, this is going to be an Eagles team that should resemble the 2022 squad, if not better. And if history repeats itself, there should be a new NFC East champion this year. I think the Eagles are in for a 12-5 season with their new additions. And finally, for last year's division champ, the 12-5 Dallas Cowboys and their best case scenario. In a perfect world, Dak Prescott returns to the MVP conversation like he did last year. A slimmed out Ezekiel Elliott has a bounce back year after a one-season trip to New England. CD keeps dominating, and Trayvon Diggs returns to elite status next to 2023 interception leader Deron Bland. Oh yeah, along with Micah Parsons. I could probably see this happening, and it would be a pretty cool story, especially now with Zeke leading the backfield again somehow. But just like any other year, it wouldn't be a complete season without some fashion of a Dallas meltdown. However, if this scenario did come together, Dallas could easily finish 13-4. Now the worst case scenario. It would be hard for Dallas to be really awful this season, unless they get hit with a wave of injuries or if Jerry Jones takes over coaching duties. But then again, you can't rule out anything with the Cowboys. I think the worst that this team could be is probably about 8-9. And for the most realistic scenario, we know the NFC East simply doesn't have repeat champs these days. So it seems pretty likely that there's a bit of a fall off from last year, especially considering last season felt like the Cowboys' best chance in the near future to end their Super Bowl drought. On that note, let's go with 11-6 for a realistic record. To sum it up, that puts the Giants in last place, the Commanders in third, Cowboys in second, and the Eagles as your 2024 NFC East champions. If you haven't already, check out our other season prediction videos and subscribe to Football Today for more NFL content.